The diner clock ticked loudly in the silence of the afternoon lull, each second marking the weight of exhaustion that clung to Evelyn Hart's shoulders. She was 23, her hair pulled into a messy bun, strands falling loose over her face as she hurried between tables with trays that always seemed heavier than her small frame could carry. She had learned to smile through the weariness, to offer warmth in her voice even when her feet ached from the double shift she picked up just to keep the lights on in her tiny apartment. But that day, the air was different. Something unsettling lingered, like a storm pressing against the glass before the rain begins. 3 men, dressed in leather jackets that looked as if they hadn't been washed in weeks, slouched at the corner booth. Their laughter was coarse, their words sharp, and their eyes carried the kind of arrogance that didn't know the meaning of respect. They weren't regulars. Evelyn knew most of the locals, but these men carried a different energy. Outsiders with trouble etched into every smirk. She tried to stay calm as she approached with her notepad, praying that kindness could smooth over whatever edge they brought into the room. But kindness, at least for men like them, was fuel. The tallest leaned back in his seat, eyes running over her like she was nothing more than a target to mock. He whispered something crude, and the others roared with laughter. Evelyn's stomach tightened, but she swallowed it down, pen steady in her hand as she asked for their order. They gave it with sarcasm, dragging their words out, testing how far they could push her. By the time she walked away, her hands trembled. The humiliation clung to her like a second skin. The lunch rush dwindled, leaving only a few customers, but the men didn't ease. They whistled when she passed, made comments under their breath, and twice one of them brushed against her arm when she set down plates. She wanted to scream, but she needed this job more than anything. Rent was due, her mother's medical bills waited, and she couldn't afford to risk angering them. So she pushed the pain down, forced the corners of her mouth upward, and carried on. But the storm always breaks. When Evelyn leaned to wipe down a nearby table, one of the men stood and blocked her path. His shadow fell over her, his smirk widening as he reached for a strand of her hair. "Don't run off, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. The laughter of his friends echoed like nails on a chalkboard. Evelyn's chest constricted. Fear prickled up her spine. She looked around desperately, but the remaining customers had shrunk into their seats, unwilling to intervene. She was alone. And then the door opened. The sound was subtle, a bell jingling as sunlight spilled across the floor, but it carried a weight that changed everything. 5 men walked in, their boots heavy, their presence undeniable. They weren't polished or quiet, they wore leather vests marked with patches, their beards thick, their faces roughened by wind and years on the road. Motorcycles rumbled outside, still cooling from the ride. The diner air seemed to shift as everyone turned to stare. The thugs froze for a moment, watching the newcomers claim a table near the front. Evelyn's breath caught. These were bikers, real ones, not the pretenders who mocked her. They didn't look at her with ridicule, didn't treat the space like a playground for cruelty. Instead, one of them, a broad-shouldered man with streaks of gray in his beard, lifted his hand in a casual wave. His eyes met hers, not hungry, not harsh, just human. If you believe in kindness and second chances, and in the power of standing up for what's right, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel, Fearless Grace. Together we can spread stories that remind us of the strength of goodness in a world that often forgets it. The tension didn't vanish immediately, but it shifted. The thugs muttered among themselves, mocking the newcomers, trying to hold on to their false dominance. But it was hard to pretend when the bikers' presence filled the room. Evelyn carried their menace over, and for the first time that afternoon, she smiled naturally. They greeted her with respect, their voices low and kind, asking her name before placing their orders. She almost wanted to cry from the relief. But cruelty doesn't surrender so easily. As Evelyn set down coffee for the bikers, one of the thugs slapped his palm on the counter. "Hey, waitress!" he shouted. "Forget them. Why don't you come sit with real men?" His friends howled with laughter. The words hung heavy in the diner. Everyone froze, waiting for what would happen next. Evelyn's chest tightened. She wanted to disappear, to vanish before the situation escalated. She turned quickly, intending to retreat, but the broad-shouldered biker with the gray, streaked beard rose to his feet. His chair scraped against the tile, loud enough to slice through the laughter. He walked slowly, deliberately, until he stood between Evelyn and the man at the counter. She said no. The biker said, his voice calm but edged with steel. The thug smirked, though his confidence wavered. "What's it to you, old man?" The biker leaned closer, his tone dropping low, so quiet the room seemed to strain to hear. "It's to me because respect is the line you don't cross, and you just crossed it." The room went silent. The biker's friends shifted in their seats, watching closely, ready to move if needed. The thugs weren't laughing anymore. They exchanged nervous glances, bravado draining from their faces. One muttered something about leaving, and in moments they slipped out the door, the bell jingling once more as silence rushed in behind them. Evelyn stood frozen, her breath uneven. The danger had left, but her body trembled as though the shadows still lingered. The biker turned to her, his expression softening. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, though tears pricked her eyes. For the first time in hours, maybe even days, she felt seen, not as someone to be mocked, but as a person worthy of dignity. The bikers stayed for a while, ordering food, telling stories among themselves, their laughter loud but warm. They teased each other with familiarity, their bond like family, and when Evelyn brought their check, the gray, streaked man pushed it back across the table. "Already covered," he said with a wink. She opened the slip of paper to find not just the bill paid in full, but a tip so generous it brought tears spilling down her cheeks. They left as quietly as they came, engines roaring to life, the sound fading into the distance. But the memory of their presence stayed behind, like sunlight lingering after the clouds part. Evelyn cleaned the tables with a new strength in her chest, her heart lighter. For once, the diner didn't feel like a place of exhaustion. It felt like hope. That night, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the envelope of cash they had given her. It wasn't just money. It was a reminder that in a world filled with cruelty, there are still protectors, still people who choose kindness over dominance, who stand up for strangers without expecting anything in return. She thought of her mother, frail but smiling in her hospital bed, and promised herself she would carry that same courage forward. Days turned into weeks, but Evelyn never forgot that afternoon. She carried herself differently now, her steps lighter, her eyes braver. And every time the diner door jingled open, she felt ready, not afraid, not helpless, but strong, because she had seen what courage looked like, and it lived in the unexpected kindness of strangers. To everyone watching, if this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Fearless Grace. Your support keeps these powerful, human stories alive, reminding us all that even in the hardest moments, there is light waiting to walk through the door. And before you go, leave a comment. Have you ever seen someone stand up for a stranger in real life? We'd love to hear your stories.